Zaguirre, the manager of Bethlehem Steel's mining subsidiary in eastern Kentucky. 1:30 p.m. Departs Neon, visits families in Jackhorn, McRoberts, and Hammond, Kentucky. 4 p.m. Delivers brief remarks on the steps of the Floyd County Courthouse in Prestonburg, Kentucky. 4:30 p.m. Flies from a small airport near Prestonburg to Louisville on Governor Nunn's plane. 6 p.m. Attends a reception in his honor at the home of Mary and Barry Bingham, Sr., publishers of the Louisville Courier. Introduction. The Appalachian Mountains were formed about 3 billion years ago, when all the continents came together to form a single giant supercontinent that geologists call Pangaea. Somewhere along the Carolina coast, Africa smashed into North America, albeit at a speed so slow as to confound human comprehension, and crumpled the eastern half of what is now the United States. Waves of mountains rose up. Over the ensuing 2 billion years, the weight of the mountains pressed down on deep layers of dead and decomposing organic matter, mostly prehistoric plants, squeezing out the oxygen and turning the mush into peat, which, after another few 100 million years, turned into a carbon-based black rock that burns slowly and emits tremendous heat. Coal. The Appalachians may have once stood as tall as the Himalayas stand today. Time has worn them down, but they are still formidable, and they are still pressing down and squeezing in ways both literal and figurative. Just over 50 years ago, in February 1968, Robert Kennedy, a U.S. Senator born into great wealth and privilege, went to the Appalachian Mountains in eastern Kentucky to meet with people born at the opposite end of the social and economic spectrum: disabled coal miners, single and widowed mothers, children whose parents could not afford to feed them adequately. The trip occurred at a pivotal moment in American history. The Tet Offensive had launched just weeks before, and at a pivotal moment in Robert Kennedy's life. He was mulling a run for the presidency. For 2 days, Kennedy traveled hundreds of miles up and down the hills and hollows of eastern Kentucky on what the press dubbed a poverty tour. He visited one-room schoolhouses and dilapidated homes. He held a public hearing in a ramshackle high school gymnasium, sitting behind a wooden table set up in the foul lane. He toured a strip mine and spoke at a small mountain college. As acting chairman of a Senate subcommittee on poverty, Robert Kennedy went to Kentucky to gauge the progress of the war on poverty launched 4 years earlier by his brother's successor, Lyndon Johnson. Robert Kennedy wasn't merely on a fact-finding mission, however. A cold political calculus was at work, too. Kennedy was considering challenging President Johnson for the Democratic presidential nomination, but he would need support from white voters to win it. Kennedy's main constituencies were dispossessed minorities: African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans. He needed to form a coalition between them and working-class whites. "Let's face it," he told a reporter, "I appeal best to people who have problems." His trip to eastern Kentucky was a dry run for his presidential campaign, an opportunity to test his anti-war and anti-poverty message with hardscrabble whites. He was greeted by what one biographer has described as a mixture of adulation and loathing. Young people mobbed him like he was a beetle, begging him for autographs and tousling his own famous mop top. Their parents, however, were more circumspect. Frustrated by the government's continued inability to improve their lives, and by years of unkept promises, they warned Kennedy of a growing anger toward Washington. A month after his visit, Kennedy officially announced he was challenging Johnson for the Democratic nomination. 4 months after his visit, he was murdered. He was 42. He was survived by his wife, Ethel, and their 10 children. Their 11th child would be born 6 months after his death. This is the story of Robert Kennedy's visit to the mountains of eastern Kentucky in the turbulent and chaotic winter of 1967-68, when Vietnam and Peggy Fleming